Hey everyone, this is Edan of LightCycleAstrology.com. Welcome to the channel, friends. Today we are taking a look at the astrology for the week ahead for June 26th through July the 2nd. So this is Mantic Monday episode number 3. I hope you guys have been enjoying the changeover of the style of content where instead of looking at individual transits, we take a look at the astrology for an entire week ahead. Normally, I try to provide a theme for the entire week that will encapsulate the essence of the week. But today, I want to do horoscopes for all 12 rising signs. So we'll take a look at the transits that are most prominent in the sky this week for us, but then we will plug them into your birth chart based on your rising sign. And this will help us see which particular house topics or areas of life the transits may be pulling in for you this week. So that's what we're going to do today. Before we get into it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Leave me some comments. That is always my favorite part, is to see how you guys experience the astrology out there. It's a wonderful teacher for me, and it's nice to connect with people and see how they are noticing the archetypal themes or energies that are coming through. You can always find me at lightcycleastrology.com. My name is Edan, and I am a practicing traditional astrologer. So if you ever want a personalized reading, you can go to lightcycleastrology.com and send me a message there. Okay, guys, well, let's go ahead and we'll pull up the real-time clock before we get into horoscopes, and we'll take a look at the transits, what days they're happening and what transits are happening here. So the first thing that is coming through for us this week is going to be on Monday. We are getting the perfected square between Mars and Uranus. So perfected means that the two planets are going to be moving into an exact alignment. Last week, we began feeling this Mars-Uranus energy as we typically use about 3 degrees before and 3 degrees after planets perfect to watch out for those particular builds-up or waning down of the energies, as it were. So last week we had the buildup of this energy between Mars and Uranus. And I don't know about you, but I definitely had a couple of different things that I noticed very, very prominently for me personally. I also noticed that, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, the whole news with the Russia thing, with the rogue military guy that is marching on Moscow, or I'm not following the news story, but I guess it's, pretty destabilizing, which is a classic or typical kind of delineation that you would get for a Mars-Uranus square, the god of war meeting the god of chaos and the god of surprises. So you get sort of like a surprise attack or something like that, or like surprise accidents. So this energy is perfecting right at the outset of the week. And then one of the ways that the ancient astrologers would describe the second half of a transit, where the planets were still close within 3 degrees, but they were beginning to separate away from the perfection of the aspect, is that they described it as almost like a very ripe fruit that was heavy on the branch, sort of weighing the branch down. And the buildup of energy was the fruit ripening. So it's kind of like the momentum is building, the tension is building as the two planets are coming together. Then it perfects, and then past the perfection, you could also get manifestations of the transits where something that happens to us sort of symbolically represents the planetary movements in the heavens, but it's more like, okay, the energy is already built, the tension is taut, and this could be like the fruit snapping off the branch and falling to the ground, mirroring some kind of like, manifestation of the energies symbolically for us down here, or mirroring those cosmic energies. So watch for that this week in terms of that tension. If there's some tension there, Mars-Uranus sometimes wants to break free and become independent, be independent in a way that you can act with your own free will and not be sort of bound to things. So if there's tension there where you feel like you need to break away from something and do something on your own, that could be some prominent themes for the week for you as well here. Also on Monday, the sun begins applying to trine Saturn. So like Mars and Uranus last week, where the planets are now coming into an alignment, but they haven't perfected yet. The first couple of days of the week, we're going to see the sun and Saturn building their energy towards a trine. And then this is going to perfect late Wednesday and then begin to wane. So we see sort of the rise and fall of this transit right in the middle of the week here. This one I like because for me, this is a positive thing. Personally, I'm a Scorpio rising with Mars on my ascendant. So I sometimes struggle with I always want to go fast with things, and I have trouble finding sometimes the patience. And I noticed that when you get Sun trine Saturn or positive Saturn transits, that a lot of times for me, it means, okay, this is a day where I'm just going to be relaxed and mellow enough to really just have patience to get things done in order in a methodical kind of way. So I enjoy transits with positive aspects to Saturn. This could also represent, though, sometimes like a Saturnine fatherly kind of figure that provides some kind of support. Trines are said to be of the nature of Jupiter, so it's kind of like a beneficial or supportive aspect that comes through. It could be a figure that has had experience and knows exactly what you're going through and provides some kind of support or knowledge or wisdom based on experience or age or something like that. So that is another aspect that we're getting in the week here. Also, we kick off the week, the first day or so we have on Monday, the first quarter moon moving through the sign of Libra. First quarter moons are generally about, I call them the building moons, because it's generally kind of an active moon that tries to get things actualized or initialized. It's sort of the boots on the ground. Let's get moving. Let's do things. In the sign of Libra, this could be about, compromise or finding some neutral or level ground to do something on in terms of relationships, or this could be where we come to some agreement or try to smooth things over in relationships or in partnership or something like that. Tuesday, if we roll the clock forward, Mercury enters Cancer this week. Normally, planets entering signs are noticeable. You do notice the energies, even with faster moving planets like this. But one reason why I wanted to share this particular aspect for the week is because this is a Mercury under combustion, meaning that Mercury has been very near the sun and catching up to the sun. So when planets get very close to the sun was thought of as a malefic planet, harming with the power of the rays. It's sort of like burning up the planet. In traditional astrology, that's the way they thought of the sun. Normally, the sun was a benefic or at least a neutral kind of a planet. But because, it's like being out in the sun and not having protection. When you get very near the sun, it's like it can burn you. So this was a metaphor for the archetypal energies of Mercury: thoughts, speech, communication, mind, commerce, markets, trading, sports, children, education, learning. All of those mercurial things have been getting more and more burnt up, metaphorically speaking. But the caveat here is that Mercury had been in one of his domiciles or temples, and this is thought of as being sheltered from the rays of the sun. So when planets are near the sun, but they're in their own temple, it's like they are they have a house or a roof to shelter them from those harsh rays. But this is a big change because we see Mercury entering Cancer on Tuesday, and it's like the shelter is ripped away from Mercury, and now he's just exposed to these very harsh rays. So for a couple of days, some of the astrological weather could be that those mercurial archetypal things suffer a little bit more or sort of seem to be burnt up. So this could be like the sun can sometimes represent authority figures or ambition. So could authority figures or ambition somehow be sort of frying our mental acuity or communication somehow? Or could a boss at work like just cut you off and say, I don't want to care what you say or think, I need to tell you this and I'm just going to override it. It has that malefic kind of quality to it. Now, this isn't the biggest transit in the world, so this is just a little bit of an energy coming through the week, but definitely probably noticeable, I would say. Also on Tuesday, Venus begins applying to square Uranus. This perfects by the end of the week on Sunday. So this is another notable transit for the week because, of course, we have been having this Venus-Mars conjunction in the sky. Something I've talked about in the last couple of episodes where Venus has been approaching Mars, more and more day by day. She's heading towards her retrograde. So Venus and Mars will not actually perfect a conjunction before Venus stations to turn retrograde. Mars sort of escapes. But there has been this very prominent energy of Venus and Mars coming together in the sign of Leo. And right now, both planets are very near each other, that they're going to aspect the same planets elsewhere in the sky. So last week we had Mars walking through the square with Uranus and perfecting this week. And now we see Venus is going to engage with Uranus in the same kind of way. So this could definitely be anything related to Venus, right? Art, creativity, relationships, love, aesthetics, beauty, harmony, friendships, even sometimes sisters. That could provide this week a kind of exciting element that will bring in some new, fresh, turning over the soil of love or relationships or anything related to Venus. But it could also, of course, provide, because this is a square and happening in fixed signs, this could provide kind of that destabilizing quality that Uranus often brings to the table. So you could have like an exciting but destabilizing or chaotic element enter into things like relationship or love or harmony or friendships or anything like that, right? Okay, now if we roll the clock forward to Wednesday, we are going to get actually between Wednesday to Friday, we're going to get the first quarter moon waxing into a gibbous moon, traveling through the sign of Scorpio. So this is notable for me because, of course, we have a moon traveling through the sign of her depression or fall. Sometimes when the moon is in Scorpio, we hash out, or things that are buried deep emotionally for us come to the surface, and sometimes we can hash those out with people. With the moon, it might be with family members or sisters, or it can also represent just fortune falling on hard times, like just having a general misfortune come about, like your car breaking down or anything mundane like that. But sometimes we notice that with the moon traveling through Scorpio, especially because the moon is waxing towards a full moon. So this is an energy where the moon is, building her prowess up and going through the sign of her fall as she is working towards culmination, represents that there might be like a hitch in the plans or kind of like a misfortune or an obstacle that we have to overcome. Also, we get another phase of the moon coming through this week. The moon waxes into a gibbous moon and it is traveling between Friday to the end of the week, Sunday, through the sign of Sagittarius. So we're going to get a full moon in Capricorn this month. We'll be talking about that next week, but this is just another lunar phase that is kind of interesting. And then the last major thing that we are going to take a look at, we get Mercury moving into Cazimi, or it was called the heart of the sun. And this is very, very notable because Mercury goes through quite a roller coaster this week. Mercury begins the week going through those last few degrees of his temple of Gemini and having protection from the harshness of the sun. And then it's like that protection gets ripped away, and now he's exposed under the harsh rays of the sun as he enters Cancer. And it's like he suffers for 4 or 5 days, and then it's like he makes it safe to the Cazimi moment where he is in exact conjunction alignment with the sun. And in ancient astrology, they called that Cazimi. We usually just think of it as a conjunction, but it's a very specific thing that relates to the planet sort of going into the underworld, going through a death and rebirth process. This is the moment where you get the rebirth. That harshness symbolically represents the dying out of an old archetypal. It's like that old archetype of Mercury is worn out. We're going to see Mercury emerge as an evening star, which is really cool because Mercury is going to be expressing through the sign of Cancer, a feminine or nighttime sign. So this is really neat that we get the recovery Mercury, or the aha moment, or the rebirth of Mercury. But what is so notable is that this happens in a very tight sextile to the planet Jupiter. There's such a roller coaster with Mercury this week, but it improves dramatically. I mean, you have a cazimi, which is a positive, a sextile, which is thought of as an aspect that was related to Venus. And Jupiter is, of course, a benefic planet. So this is positive testimony coming from a positive planet that may have something to do with relationships or with Venusian kinds of things. One of the reasons for this is you'll notice that today I have added in these ancient bound terms where they divide each sign into particular sections or segments where planets are said to rule over those particular segments within a sign. So you'll notice here, check this out. Jupiter is within the bounds of Mercury, meaning that Jupiter will express through a Venusian archetypal way because he's in Venus's temple, but specifically he has to also ask Mercury what he is obligated to do. The bound terms in ancient astrology were related to obligations or necessity, things that we had to do. So you get Jupiter basically doing Jupiter kinds of things in a Venusian style, but having to do those things for Mercury. Well, Mercury is going through a cazimi at the moment. So that's a positive, very positive testimony from Jupiter in Mercury's bounds, but also applying or witnessing to Mercury by sextile. And it's very, very tight. Look at this, 921 for Jupiter and 919 for the sun. So very, very tight aspect here. If you take a look at the bounds of where the cazimi is happening in the sign of Cancer, it's happening in Venus's term bounds. And of course, Venus is walking into that square with Uranus right at that same moment while being in the conjunction to Mars. So these were my houses that I chose to plug in the rising sign horoscope delineations. You know, we're going to take a look at the house topics that Taurus is occupying, which house is Cancer overlaying in your birth chart, and which house is Leo overlaying in your birth chart based on what rising sign is coming above the ascendant when you were born. So for Aries Rising, if we pull in some of these transits and plug them into the house topics, we could see maybe spending some extra money on your father or closing escrow on a property or home. Maybe that's the cazimi in the fourth house. Working on teaching conflict resolution to your children, maybe some of that Mars-Venus energy in the fifth, experimentation on a new form of recreation, getting ready to spend some big money on fireworks for the 4th of July for the kids, and just maybe having your kids be just wily and crazy with the Mars-Venus conjunction in the fifth, making that square back to Uranus, just general high, maybe aggressive, but also loving behavior in the children this week could be something that you notice. Or if you don't have children, maybe that same energy translates to just your own ways in which you're creative or having fun. Sometimes this combination can have to do with what our father's property produces. So the fourth house in ancient astrology was related to the father. The fifth house by derivative was sort of the money or finances of the father's property. Sometimes this can stretch into our own property. So if there's something that is produced on our property or our inherited property or something like that, sometimes this can be about that. Also, finding out that your house appraisal went up, maybe that connection between Uranus in the second house of money and finances to the cazimi in the fourth house, that Jupiter cazimi sextile connection. Maybe it's like I could see somebody getting an appraisal and it's like, oh my gosh, the value of my property or land just went up. It's worth more now, or what have you. You do want to be careful of accidents while playing or accidents happening to children. That Mars in the fifth, still within range of that square to Uranus, can speak to accidents. And the way that we might see that come through is accidents while we're doing something recreationally, or while our children are playing, or something like that. So that's something that you want to look out for. Or it could be something like conflict around spending money on entertainment. That square energy could be about working through conflict or resolution. How, especially with Venus there, it's like, do we have to take a look at the ways that we spend money on things that are frivolous or just for entertaining? It could be something as simple as canceling Hulu because you're paying for Netflix. It doesn't have to be anything big, but it could be something along those lines. So if you are an Aries rising, those are some of the ways that you might see these transits based on the house topics that the transits are landing in your personal birth chart. Okay, well, let's go ahead and we'll put Taurus on the ascendant now. If you're a Taurus rising, this is going to put the Venus-Mars conjunction in your fourth house. We're going to see the cazimi in the third, and then we're also taking a look at the first house because Jupiter and Uranus are both aspecting the cazimi and Venus-Mars planets. So if you are a Taurus rising, perhaps coming to a moment of clarity about incorporating positive personal growth into everyday situations, right? Because we're thinking about the cazimi in the third house, and the third house is related to our everyday environment, or the people in the everyday environment, or the comings and goings. And that cazimi is going to represent some kind of birth or some kind of aha clarity or resolution that is like beginning to percolate. But how does the Jupiter testimony from the first house, how does that support those energies in the third? Well, so it could be the growth that you've been positively making towards yourself in the first house. Could be this could be a time where you want to incorporate that somehow. You want to change the schedule around. You want to make sure that there's room for those positive changes or elements for you personally in your everyday environment. Or it could be the fruition of, you've already done that. You've already made these positive changes, but now something really good is coming from that. And it's like you're sort of reaping the rewards of sticking to a regimen, or sticking to, a routine that is starting to pay off now. That could be the testimony of Jupiter making that sextile to the cazimi in the third house here. Expanding one's technical skill, because we're talking about Mercury in the heart of the sun, and Mercury has to do with learning or technicality or skills or things like that. Language, somebody taking on, the learning of something new, like a language, especially in the third, or a new writing project, anything like that. But this one is also like giving a speech at a wedding. Yeah, I'm just reading off my notes here, but I get this image of like somebody that has to give a speech at a wedding about the bride and groom, or being like the MC at a family function, or, the one that provides a central organization within the family. The third house, it's like you got the house of relatives. You got the Venus-Mars conjunction coming together in the fourth. It's like you're called upon to be like the organizing person that has to deliver a speech or provide the directive of events or something like that, especially, with the 4th of July coming. This could be something like that, but it paints a picture for me of like the moment you have to stand up and toast the new bride and groom, and everybody's around you, and it's got something to do with Venus. It's got something to do with Cancer and family and home and relatives in the third house. And then it's your Jupiter, so you're this outgoing, fun-loving personality. And sometimes, cazimi's in the third house can be about breakthrough communications or something like that. So there could be some fun themes around that kind of scenario. This may also be a time of making your home surroundings suit your sense of style or personality better. And if relatives are visiting, there may be conflict or accidents in the home. So be careful of fireworks if you got the whole family around you. Again, that Mars square Uranus energy is still prominent for you. And you may be feeling eccentric in the way you take pleasure at home, or with family or friends or relationships. That eccentric Venus square Uranus energy. That could definitely be bringing in a little bit of like, I'm not only gregarious with Jupiter in the first, but I'm also a little eccentric. And you get some of that more outlandish behavior sometimes with Venus Uranus squares. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll put Gemini on the ascendant here. This is going to move this consortium of characters. We get the Mars and Venus conjunction happening in the third, making squares back to Uranus in the 12th. That's pretty interesting. And then we get the Cazimi in the second house of finances and money, making a sextile back to Jupiter as it walks through the Cazimi moment. So we're talking about 12th house topics, a place that had to do with secrets or that part of ourselves that we don't see that tends to be detrimental. You know, it's that side of our personality or our character or our behavior that we shoot ourselves in the foot, we stick our foot in our mouths, or something like that. But it tends to be the parts of ourselves or our behavior that leads us away from what is good for us. And it can also be about secretive things like hidden enemies, people that are wanting you to fail, but you don't know about that. So this is a very, very interesting combination because you get a benefic planet that is providing something positive to the house of money and finances if you're a Gemini rising. So I'm trying to think like, wow, how could you get a positive but secretive or like an enemy kind of energy providing something good for your personal finances or skill or money? Mercury in the second house may be about developing skills that later down the road provide money. This could be like learning something new or technical or some information that will manifest as a way to earn or provide livelihood. Having Jupiter in the 12th house can sometimes be about breaking through or healing from things that are self-detrimental. But this might also be like the temptation to like steal something at a store, or this could be the temptation to make some easy money that is somehow not so scrupulous, or it's like almost like a politician that wants to pay somebody off, and it's gonna pad your bank account, but it's also gonna be like, it's not really a moral thing, or it doesn't have that weight of, it doesn't have like a scrupulous end to it. You know what I mean? So that's really interesting. Now, this could just be about healing that happens that somehow provides some new skill or resource for us. Like maybe we cut out buying something that we have been spending money on, and so we get a little bit more money in the bank, and we've sort of cut out something that's bad. So there are different ways and angles to look at this transit, but definitely this is one where there's a little bit of a seedy energy. So if some shady character comes up to you and wants to give you some money or wants to do something for you, you definitely want to check out the motives of that situation very, very much, because it could be that later down the road, it's like, oh, I took the money, or I agreed to that, and it helped me out. It gave me something, but it ended up being something that in the long run was not so great for me. So that is a pretty interesting dynamic of these house topics coming in here. This could also be a liberation in love through solitude. So sometimes the 12th house provides that solitude where we can reground ourselves. But with the Venus square to Uranus there, it's like you break away, you get away for a day, and you decide to spend your day away from kids, away from a partner, away from work, and you're just alone in a beautiful place, but it's revitalizing you somehow. It's giving you healing, positive energy, but you have to like break away to do it. A very Venus square Uranus kind of a moment there. Detrimental earnings or spendings or investing, we talked about that. Good fortune on your wallet coming through hospitals or things centered around healing, for example. So my partner is a Gemini rising. I'm hoping that some of the bills she's been getting from a hospital, I'm hoping that there might be a surprise. You don't really owe that money for giving birth. It's like this part of the bill, oh, we overbilled you or something like that. But we'll see. But for example, Yoga with Adrian. Have you guys ever seen this channel? This is a pretty good channel, a yoga channel that my partner watches and follows along with. I like her too, but the healing of the 12th house meets Venus, Uranus in the third house, maybe doing something that is better for your routine here. Mars and Venus in the third is going to bring in maybe some changes, maybe some conflict, but also maybe some soothing energy to things that have been disruptive in the everyday environment. And Uranus may provide that destabilization that helps things, break free and makes it able for those routines or those mental habits or constructs to change and begin to form anew. So that's a positive thing, but it might be uncomfortable because you have Mars there as well. So that's what I'm seeing for Gemini Rising. Now let's go ahead and we'll move the clock to put Cancer on the ascendant. This is going to move this Mars-Venus conjunction into the second house of money and resources. That is making a square back to planets in the 11th house of friends, groups, associations, ambition for the future. Then the cazimi is happening in your first house, the house of body, psychology. So this one is very personal for you if you're Cancer rising. This cazimi moment, it's like you're having this revelation or aha moment. You're speaking on behalf of your soul very, very personally and deeply with this cazimi moment. Could this potentially be the beginning of some kind of identifying yourself as a healer or healing person, tending the garden of your personal emotional needs? This is like with Mercury being the ruler of your 12th house, moving into the first house and then moving into that cazimi position with the sun in the first. It's almost like if there's been kind of a journey to recover or come back to yourself. It's been hard, it's been difficult, and especially at the beginning of the week, maybe there was some frayed or burnt edges around doing that. But it's as if by the time the weekend rolls around, there's some really positive progress that is being made. And it may pull in benefactors, people that are supporting you, as seen by this sextile from Jupiter in the 11th house of friends and benefactors or resources of other people that are prominent, like a job or like a paycheck or something like this. But it's a really positive thing. So overall, this is great. And you do get the square between Uranus and Venus, between the 11th house and the second house. And this may be, I almost get the image of like tending a community garden, right? You have the 11th house of communities or associations or groups that you belong to. And the second house, it's almost like if you're Cancer, how does community somehow shake things up with finances? And I think it's both positive and where you might get some gains, but you also might get some losses, because Venus in your second house can often be about gains in money or possessions, but Mars there can often speak to losses. So it's a little bit like you make some money, you spend some money, or you know what I mean? And it may have something to do with communities or collectives that you belong to or friends that you hang out with or something like that. But it's almost like with Taurus being in the 11th house, if you're Cancer rising, it's almost like that imagery of Taurus and the garden, right? The community garden somehow shaking up or bringing both gains and losses in money or finances. It's kind of an interesting one. Branching out into new ways to create value for a group or with a group or in a group. Those are themes, I think, for the week for Cancer rising. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll roll the clock forward to put Leo on the ascendant here. So if you're Leo rising, you're having this Venus conjunct Mars happen in your first house of self, personality, psychology, body, that is making a square to Uranus in the 10th house of career, or the the most prominent visible aspect of ourselves to the public. So the 10th house, it wasn't just career in ancient astrology. It also got at what is this is interesting because in modern astrology, people tend to think of the first house as like, oh, this is the persona that the world sees. But in ancient astrology, there is quite a distinction with that. The first house is fundamentally the house of the soul. It carries within that region of the sky the ascendant degree, and so part of the first house is the part of the world below the ascendant, and it's the part of the world that immediately is above the ascendant. So that part above the ascendant is related to spirit or soul. That part below is related to the physicality of the body, or emotions or personality, the inborn or inherited physical traits and things like that. Whereas the 10th house is more about, okay, when I go out into the world, the sun at high noon is most visible. Everybody can see the sun can see everybody. So when you get the way that they came up with some of the meaning behind the 10th house is that the sun's journey starts out in the east and then it culminates in that 10th house. It's called the midheaven. So the meaning of the 10th house often relates to that extremely publicly visible place where we get reputation or rank or achievement or success, but it pulls in reputation. So when you have Jupiter running through your 10th house, that's generally good. It's like people are going to see you as a generous person. People are going to see you as a gregarious or jovial kind of larger than life kind of figure. But with this square from Venus and Mars back to Uranus, it's like there is change in job, relationship, change in career, or what we practice or do out in the world, how people see us. It's like something is getting shaken up. Something is changing around those topics of career or public image. And it may be about, okay, I have to start a different kind of work, or I've gotten a new job, or I've gotten a new promotion, or something has changed in the professional sphere that is now causing a ripple effect for me to identify or change differently personally. So that is one major theme that is coming through. The Cazimi happening in the 12th, though, potentially a boss, teacher, mentor that inspires you to work on some hidden dimension of yourself, It's like when somebody comes along and says, you don't see this about yourself, but if you just could stop doing this, your life would just be so much better. Like you shoot yourself in the foot with this every time. It's like somebody in a position of authority may point that out to you. That can be difficult, but it can also be like, it's also like the hindsight where it's like, man, I remember when I was younger, if I would have just done this or not done that, then my life would be so much different today. It has a little bit of that weighty kind of quality to it. With Venus and Mars in the first house, sometimes this can be about meeting a new romantic. Usually we look to the 7th house to delineate relationships or meeting like a romantic partner or something like that. But in the first house, we have things that begin for us. And with Venus and Mars in there, the planets of the traditional lovers, you could definitely see a relationship beginning or inceptualizing around this time. And it may be connected to somebody that you know at work or something like that, a boss or a mentor or somebody above you, or somebody that is potentially like a colleague or something like that. This might be signing up for therapy or receiving a medical or psychological diagnosis of some kind. So there are a few different angles here. With the Cazimi happening in the 12th, sometimes you're going to find out about something that has been hidden. It has been flying below the radar, and the 12th house at times connects to hospitals or healing or healers or people that work in hospitals. So could this be receiving some kind of diagnosis of some kind at this time, either psychological or physical, any kind of medical diagnosis? But those are some of the house topics for Leo if you're a Leo rising. Okay, well, let's go ahead now and we will put Virgo on the ascendant now. If you're Virgo rising, we have Mars and Venus making a conjunction in your 12th house. We have the Cazimi happening in the 11th house, and we have aspects being made from planets in the 9th to both of these other houses. So this is a fascinating one. One thing right off the bat, let's talk about the Cazimi in the 11th. Having a reception from Jupiter in the ninth. So could this be taking a business trip, right? And speaking on behalf of your company or association? I get that because I love this one here. There's some really fascinating symbolism here. So the 10th house was associated with the sun's culmination. So it's kind of like judgment from the king or authority. And you have Mercury in a conjunction with the sun in the 11th house. Well, the 11th house was a derivative second house, or the money or finances of the government or the king. So Mercury at the heart of the sun is often thought of as carrying the message or the authority to announce something on behalf of the king. You get that medieval image of the page writing out with the king's decree, and he unrolls it and he says, "Hear he, I hear announce that the king decrees this, and this, shall be the law of the land," or, whatever. So could this be about, for Virgo rising, could there be some task that you are fulfilling on behalf of your company, or that you work for, or corporation? If you are in a corporation, it's like you're set to announce to colleagues or to associations something that is coming from higher up in the chain of authority. And it also could have something to do with finances, right? Because Mercury is also archetypally connected to trade and money and finance. So this derivative symbolism and this double symbolism of the 11th house having to do with the resources of powerful groups or organizations, or the king or governments. The Mercury Cazimi also carrying the weight of a message from the king. Could this be about finances and corporation or business, or the company that you work for, and having to manage or announce or communicate something about that? I could see that for Virgo risings. And this is also providing positive testimony from Jupiter in the ninth, a place that was associated with travel. So Jupiter in the ninth is going to be, I would be very surprised for Virgo risings if Jupiter in the ninth for a lot of Virgo risings didn't represent some kind of trip. And as it's connecting to the 11th house things, it could be about business trips. So pretty interesting. Now we also have this Venus-Mars conjunction in the 12th house, making that square back to Uranus in the ninth. How growth or changes in our beliefs, morals, spirituality, higher education are informing secretive passions, motives for control or authority. Leo in the 12th often could speak to very private or secretive ambition, the sun's temple, ambition or drive for authority or control, or the eternal quest for recovery. The 12th house theme of recovering or coming back to some kind of health or healthy way of being, psychologically speaking. Meeting someone on a business trip and having a secretive love affair could be one manifestation of that combination. Suddenly wanting to find a central part of you through isolation, and checking into rehab. Joining a secret society or esoteric group, joining an occult organization. Some of these come off as a little silly, I agree, but you when you think about the 12th house, you think about the sun relating to gnosis, right? The sun's temple of Leo. Being in a secretive place can get at that kind of like, well, I belong to this secret society of wisdom and knowledge that is very ancient, but it's we're not supposed to talk about it. So it sounds silly, but it's like, how do you combine the secrecy of the 12th house with the bright illuminating quality of Leo and the sun's temple? So that's pretty interesting. So it could be working with governments, not in secrecy, but behind the scenes or in ways that's invisible. Governments often function in ways that the general public just doesn't see. But it could speak to politics. It could speak to secret or esoteric knowledge, especially because we're talking about Uranus in the ninth house. So could there be topics of religion or spirituality or divination and astrology, sort of informing things that are happening for us behind the scenes or in secret or in ways that we don't fully understand. So this could be anything from changes in belief structure, long held beliefs. We have both signs are solid or fixed signs like Taurus and Leo. It's like these are parts of us that have been there. They, especially the sun's temple of Leo. The sun is like eternal. So you get this potential energy that is being broken up in these very fixed places that has always been. Uranus's job is to sort of break that apart. And this could be very much about belief structures or habits that are not healthy for us. Those are some themes that I think could be coming up for Virgo risings this week. Let's go ahead and we'll put Libra now on the ascendant. This is going to bring in Venus and Mars into the 11th, that conjunction happening that is simultaneously squaring Uranus from the 8th house. That's an interesting pairing. And then the Cazimi moment is happening in the 10th house of career. Very, very powerful place to have a Cazimi. So if you are Libra rising, being judged for your technical ability, that is because the 10th house is very much, when we see planets traveling through our 10th house, very often it is about some kind of judgment that we receive publicly from a job at work. It's things that affect our reputation, but it's often publicly speaking. So a Cazimi could be about our technical ability because it's Mercury, and Mercury relates to things that are technical or knowledge or communicative fashions that we speak in. So could there be a judgment? Now, it doesn't mean that the judgment will be good or bad. It just means that could this be a time where we're a little bit more scrutinized for how we speak, how the technical skill that we bring to our work or something around those lines. But it also could be speaking on behalf of a boss, because we're talking about Mercury carrying the weight or authority of the king, conjunct the sun there. So you could be tasked with, it's like your boss says, hey, I need you to tell everybody below you, this is what's up. This is what we're going to do. It could be that you're sort of shouldered with some kind of task to speak on behalf of an authority figure at work or something like that. Could be that you are being the mediator at work or in a professional association among friends. You're being the mediator. Venus-Mars conjunction, sort of working out the dynamics of Venus wants to find resolution and harmony. Mars sort of wants to be independent and break away. So could there be just among groups or associations that you're mixing in with socially or professionally, could there be kind of tension in there with that Mars square Uranus, Venus square Uranus, that is speaking to like, okay, you're the Venus mediator. And I say that because of course Venus is your ascendant ruler. So for Libra rising and for Taurus rising, we're talking about that Venus conjunct Mars. Well, Venus is the planet that rules your first house. And so this could be speaking to Venus in the chart, could be speaking to you personally being represented as Venus as a character. So it's like you're smoothing over arguments or disruption that is happening among colleagues or friends in the 11th. You're tasked with leading the work meeting in the morning from your boss, but you have to sort of mediate and be the person that smooths out differences or discord, at work or something like that. But this could also be resources that are coming through from a partner that is helping you in career or practice. That's because we're receiving that beneficial testimony from Jupiter sextile the Cazimi from the 8th house. So could this be a time where there are resources from others that are somehow benefiting your career or benefiting your goals or your success at this time? The place to watch out for is sudden injury to friends or relationships over money or expectations. So that's sort of the flip side of the Uranus in the 8th house squaring Mars in the 11th. It's like, where are accidents prone to happen? If you are a Libra rising, it's signified to happen to friends or to work, colleagues, or to relationships, because Venus and Mars are in the 11th right now. So I would watch out for, situations where if you're sharing resources with others, if you're working with finances, if others are helping you out, this could be representing a time where, unbeknownst to you, maybe there are some toes that are stepped on or some expectations that aren't fully understood that have an outcome of like injury to friendships or injury to relationships with people at work or something like that. That's where the accident could happen, so to speak, with the Mars square Uranus energy. Okay, so that is what I have for Libra Rising. Now let's go ahead and we'll roll the clock forward to put Scorpio on the ascendant here. And this is going to bring in the Mars-Venus conjunction into the 10th house, the place of career and public reputation and judgment. And this is going to bring the Cazimi into the 9th house of travel or divination or higher education or ways that we connect to higher meaning or God. And this is also going to connect to planets in the 7th house, a place that was connected to competitors, relationships, marriage, and finality. Very interesting house topics to bring together. So this is my personal rising sign. So this is one that I have been already experiencing very much so. But topics of conflict or competition at work affecting reputation, or tension between relationships and activity that you're doing. Like this could definitely be working out tension with, I need to be producing this way, I need to be working this way, I need to be spending long hours at the office or away from home. And somehow there's tension in personal relationships, perhaps with these planets in the 7th house. But the Cazimi in the 9th house is clarifying or broadening the perspective of principles. So it's like you're working hard, you're balancing personal relationship kinds of things, perhaps with professional things that are happening. And there's tension between those things. And this Cazimi might bring about a clarity of like, well, it's important to work, but it's also important to have relationship. There's some kind of higher wisdom coming down from on high with the Cazimi in the 9th house that I think is just generally serving to broaden an overall understanding. It's happening in the sign of Cancer in the 9th house. So it's like ways in which we come back to higher principles, higher moral belief structures, higher values, spending time at home with family and loved ones could take precedence because we're talking about Cancer, the sign of the family or home. So that's interesting. That's where the tension lies. It's somewhere between, okay, I'm needing to do this out in the world, but I'm also needing to focus on relationships that are important to me. And the 9th house is like, come back to what's important, what you're devoted to spiritually, ethically, what has the greatest meaning for the overall, for your overall life. Those are topics that are really coming in here. Now, with Jupiter making that testimony from the 7th house back to this Mercury Cazimi in the 9th house, could you be receiving support from your partner in 9th house matters? So if there's a need to do something academically, take a trip somewhere, dive into yourself spiritually, this could be a time where your partner says, hey, I can see you really need this, and I'm with you, I'm supporting you at this moment. So those are some themes for the next week for Scorpio Rising. Now let's go ahead, we'll put Sagittarius on the ascendant here. Okay, so if you are a Sagittarius Rising now, we're going to move this consortium of planets, the transits this week, as happening primarily in the 9th house, a place that is associated with higher education, religion, beliefs, travel, and also connection to the divine or godly places like churches. And we also have a Cazimi in the 8th house between Mercury and the Sun. A house that is associated both with the resources of our partners, but also of anxiety or fears of the future, because planets in the eighth house are being pulled in time towards the Western descendant. So it's like they're being pulled down, and they know there's some kind of inevitable giving back to the soil, the ultimate tax or something that has to be given back. So the Cazimi could speak to either like a child support coming through at this time that wasn't there before. And it's like, oh, great, I have a little bit more money now. Or the resources of partner being able to help out in a family situation or something like that. So there could be positives, but it also could be speaking to there's somehow a new anxiety that I didn't have before about the future. And then we have connection to planets in the sixth house, Jupiter and Uranus making sextiles and squares back to these two planets in the ninth and the eighth. The sixth house is associated with the toil and hard work of trying to bring something towards completion. It's also associated with people that are like blue-collared workers, like tradesmen that fix your car or repair your house or something like that. And it is also associated with apprenticeships. So when you have planets in the ninth house of higher education and Jupiter in the house of apprenticeships, this could be people that are apprenticing could be getting some pretty beneficial support right now. It's as if you want to become, a massage therapist or something healing, that you're apprenticing for that. And it's like, here comes a Mercury conjunction Cazimi in the eighth house. It's like you've gotten the financing to do that. You've learned, oh, they are going to give me my grant or something like that. I can start to work on this because there's money there. That could be some positive testimony. Or there could be positive testimony coming in from a partner that is also, again, providing some new financial benefit. And then we also have the square happening between Venus and Mars to Uranus in the sixth house. One thing that I'm going to say, I'm going to go out on a little bit of a Scorpio limb here. Venus and Mars, of course, can be very sexual. In the ninth house, these two sexual planets can be about, finding higher meaning, or it's almost like finding divine meaning or godly meaning through sexuality. So when you have a square from Uranus in the sixth house, a house that was associated with slavery, I think you might see where I'm going with this. This is also a square from Uranus that is to the right of Venus and Mars. So it's a domination square. The sixth house is associated with domination, a Marsy place said to be the joy of Mars. We're having a Mars aspect from Uranus towards sexual planets in the ninth house. So one manifestation definitely of this could be some experimentation around sexuality that is for the purposes of having a deeper connection to something higher or divine. Now, of course, not all Sagittarius risings are going to be that adventurous, but I think that is one potential manifestation of some of the energies for this. But it also just could be the hard demands of the day dominate your framework of belief. That's another manifestation for this as well. It's like there is work to be done. There are tasks that I have to complete. It's like the demands of the day, the demands of the hard labor that must get done, that needs to get done, is informing beliefs. It's like, I have to believe this to get the work done. Or this could have that sort of revolutionary kind of freedom-seeking quality where it's like, I need to break away from the labor. I need to get away from the mundane, everyday toil. I can't take it anymore. I've got to take a trip. Let's just pack our bags and get on a plane and go, and well, how do we do that? Well, you've got some money. I've got some money. Mercury in the eighth house. Let's pull the money together. Let's get on a plane. I need to break away from the daily grind. That could be definitely a big part of how the week could unfold. Now, maybe it's just going to meet with a spiritual group or sign up for an astrology course or something like that. It doesn't have to be far travel, but I could definitely see these things needing to come to the surface and be expressed for Sagittarius rising. So those are some themes. You have to plug in some of the house topics and see how this is speaking individually for you, of course, but those are some of the house topics that give us clues as to what these transits may be representing right now at this time for Sagittarius rising. Okay, well, let's roll the clock forward and we'll put Capricorn on the ascendant here. So this is going to move this consortium of planets. The Mars-Venus conjunction that is happening currently in your 8th house, a place that is associated with shared resources, and also fears and anxieties potentially of the future. And that's because the 8th house, when we have planets in this place, those planets are being dragged towards the Western descendant. So sometimes we can have fears and anxiety. We are having the Cazimi between the Sun and Mercury in the 7th house of partnerships, marriage, things that become finalized. And we are having connections to planets in the 5th house where we have Jupiter and Uranus traveling. Now, if you are a Capricorn rising, first of all, Jupiter and Uranus in the 5th house, this extended period where these planets have been traveling through this space, with Capricorn risings, they often shoulder a lot of responsibility and burden for themselves and for other people, right? Because Saturn is their ruling planet. So the character that they often feel, or almost always feel that they have to play, is the person that is responsible, that gets things done, that shoulders the duties or obligations for themselves and everybody around them. They take on a lot of duty and responsibility. So having Jupiter and Uranus in the 5th house overall has been probably about the theme of like, well, work and responsibility come naturally to me. Like that is just something that, I don't have to try to figure that part out. What I have to figure out is how do I make sure that I enjoy my life, or I spend time with children, or, it brings in those 5th house topics of, hey, you can't, all work and no play, that old saying, right? So this aspect from Jupiter making testimony to the Cazimi in the 7th house could be about really making sure that there is joy or pleasure or creativity or time with children and time with partner. It's like revitalizing not only fun and recreation, potentially with children if you have them, but also reconnecting with partner, reconnecting with relationship or with marriage, like just pulling in everything. We have a Cazimi with Mercury in the sign of Cancer in the 7th, a sign that is connected to home or family. So definitely there could be like, hey, sure, I have to be responsible like always, but I really need to make sure that, here's 4th of July coming up. Like, let's have some fun. Let's reconnect. Let's bring our family back together. Let's go to the beach. Let's do something fun and recreational. Of course, you could have an announcement that your partner is pregnant, or that you announce to your partner that you're pregnant. There are those themes that could definitely come in here with Jupiter, a very fertile planet in a very fertile sign in a very fertile house. So for Capricorn rising, maybe there is more responsibility coming up for you surrounding the topics of pregnancy or children. And we also have this interesting conjunction of Venus and Mars in the 8th house. So this is really fascinating because Venus in the 8th can often speak to some kind of benefit coming from others, a resource, or anything that is benefiting you financially or supporting you in a kind of esteem kind of a way, like reputationally, like, well, what is it like? Esteem is like, oh, my husband. Yeah, I'm such and such, and that's my husband. And oh, well, let me help you out, whatever like that. Or it could be like child support that comes in from an ex-partner or something like that. But with Mars here, we get the double-edged sword, so to speak, where Mars could represent losses or somehow losing something. So could you get some child support but have to pay some pricey bills? Are you taking a vacation, but it's a lot of fun and there's enough money to do it, but then the money is also leaving at the same time? It could be like gains and losses, like gains and taxes. you know. Sometimes with Mars in the eighth, you're definitely going to see people passing away, like a fatherly figure. So this represent inheritance that comes along now? Maybe what it is with the Cazimi, it's like your partner loses somebody and there is an inheritance, and that provides sadness, of course, but also the ability to maybe do something recreationally, ways to enjoy life, something like that. So these are some of the ways in which you might bring in, but basically we're speaking to bringing in some eighth house kinds of topics, shared resources, potentially fears or anxiety towards the future, losses or gains that have a connection with other people, potentially something becoming finished or complete with a relationship, some kind of announcement with a partner, or the finalization of a marriage or divorce, things that are seventh house topics coming through with the Cazimi there, potentially just things happening with our partner. Maybe partner gets a job that is very technical and it's the beginning of something for our partner. And also the topics of children, creativity, and recreation, and just having joy in balancing out work with play. So these are the topics that I would look for if you're Capricorn Rising. Now let's go ahead and we'll pull in Aquarius. We'll put Aquarius on the ascendant here. And this is going to move Mars and Venus into the seventh house of relationships. The Mercury Sun conjunction, or Cazimi, happening in the sixth house, a place associated with hard work and toil, trying to bring something towards completion. Also conflict, obstacles, misfortune, sometimes healing, and also people that are serving you or that you're serving. And then we also have planets in the fourth house, Jupiter and Uranus, making contacts to both of these houses. So for Aquarius Rising, definitely with Jupiter in the fourth house and Uranus there are things that have been changing, that have been growing, positive things around home or family, new births in the family, changes happening to property, money coming into home, or, development at home with the family or with the property. Something good has been happening at the roots, at the home, in the family. And there may be some breakthrough with Mercury Cazimi in the sixth that allows you to understand how to communicate effectively through sort of mitigating conflict, or speaking on behalf of some higher wisdom that can help solve an issue or a problem or a misfortune. But I could very much see this as, let's finally have a talk and let me be able to work through the family karma or the family conflict that has been around. Let's have a breakthrough in that. That is maybe what you could see with the Mercury Cazimi in Cancer in the sixth house, is dealing with conflict resolution, something like that. And you also see kind of a doubling up of that symbolism with the Mars-Venus conjunction in the seventh house of relationships. So this is pulling in definitely topics of love and relationship, perhaps conflict resolution, things that are happening at home. So this is very home centric. It is very relationship or love centric. It is very, let's work out the technical or communicative things that need to happen for something that is taking labor or requiring labor or service or problem resolution, something around that. That is what I would think about for Aquarius Rising. Okay, so let's roll the clock forward and we'll put Pisces on the ascendant now. So the weekly transits are going to pull in the house topics here. We have the Venus-Mars conjunction in the sixth house. So we're going to pull in those house topics, and those topics are happening alongside of fifth house topics. With the Cazimi here, we could be taking a look at things that relate to children, pregnancy, recreation, fun, and also the house topics of the third house, where we have Jupiter and Uranus making contacts to these planets. So I like this one a lot. First of all, the Jupiter sextile Cazimi from the third to the fifth house. This is like receiving support or mentorship like a teacher or guru that is in your everyday environment that you see often, that is somehow helping you out creatively. And, you could see with planets here in the sixth house, it's like all of a sudden you break away and you say to yourself, you know what? I am finally going to tackle that project that leads to some kind of legacy, like writing a book, anything that is going to provide some higher meaning that may take a long time, that may take a lot of work. So it could be signing up to become a therapist or a healer or a diviner. It could be like a mentorship program where we are learning under somebody here, and maybe Jupiter is representing the teacher coming in, and there is a teacher all of a sudden present in the everyday environment. Jupiter in the third house could also represent some expansion or growth around knowledge or a ritual that we do to improve our everyday environment, taking on a big course of study. But there are these themes that are related to, I'm going to get to work to provide some kind of future legacy that holds a central meaning with the Venus-Mars conjunction in the sixth house. It's going to be creative with the Cazimi in the fifth house. And there's going to be big activity in the third that is pulling in the resources of the everyday environment, or teachers of the everyday environment surrounding us, or the relationships that we make with people that we see often, potentially with siblings or something like that. This could also be conflict resolution from siblings to areas that we have been struggling with our siblings, like with Venus in the sixth house, could be working out conflicts. Mars could be bringing in conflict. One way that you want to be really careful with this Uranus square Mars energy from the third to the sixth, to me, is like if you're working on something hard, if you're doing something laborious, and it's something that you do all the time, it's very routine, that's where you want to be really careful. There could be some accident or injury, especially with Mars in the sixth. He loves to provide accidents or injury in that location. So you want to be very careful. If it's something you've done 100 times, this is a week where you definitely want to go, let me really, really think about what I'm doing while I'm doing this, because although I've done this 1,000 times, 100 times, whatever, this could be the time that you sustain some kind of accident or injury from that. Not to worry you, but to, forewarn you. If you're Pisces rising. So be careful around accidents or injuries, around things that you have done routinely or do all the time. Also, we could see the education of children coming into these house topics as well here. We have Mercury, a god that was associated with the education of young people, traveling through the sign of children and receiving Jupiter contact from the third. So could you become an educator of children? Could you be working out the curriculum for the next year if if the school period has gotten out and everybody has gone home, but could you be working out that curriculum or figuring out what you want to do as an educator? And there could be any number of things like that. But basically, we're pulling in the topics of good things coming from the environment, people in the environment, teachers in the environment, some creative breakthrough or something related to education or children in the fifth, and working out resolution with conflict with people or siblings, and also being able to sow the seeds and kick off potentially some creative project that is going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of effort, but it's like now is the time to do it, and it's going to provide maybe some lasting legacy for you personally. So these are really positive things. So I really like this for Pisces rising. Okay, guys, that's what I have for all 12 rising signs. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you guys got something good out of this. Let me know in the comments below any ways in which you notice these transits coming through, specifically based on your rising sign. That it would be really helpful for me. And I like to see how you guys are noticing some of the astrology out there. We'll be back again next week with another look at the week ahead astrology. Until then, take care, have a good week, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.